And let me also start by thanking the organizers of the forum for the invitation. It's a real pleasure and honor to be here. I will limit my remarks to 3 points. Point number one, like some other people present in this room, at some point I was an enthusiast of a regional format. We were interested to discuss things in the regional format, and we thought that that paradigm was forthcoming. We had different actors, but the idea behind was that it would be easier for the countries of the Black Sea region, of the Baltic Sea region, to come together and to cooperate. At the moment, I firmly believe that to discuss things, and especially different things, but especially security issues in the regional context, is less appropriate than ever. We are not dealing with regional problems anymore. We're dealing with the problem of European security. I mean, when we try to structure the discussion around the region, this is misleading, because it creates this impression that this problem is somewhat detached from the general security complex of Russia. It creates a psychological comfort, the understanding that you can isolate it, that this is not really your problem, that this is a problem of the region which can be contained within the region. But even more importantly, in the past we used to think that the regions will become interfaces between maybe the sets of rules established in the EU and NATO on the one hand and Russia on the other. Now we see that this is not coming true. We see that Russia does not want to come closer to those sets of rules. And on the contrary, we see more and more that the game is the good old game between the Russia and the West. In our program, the organizers formulated it as the fight for influence, rivalry. Yes, this is what it is, but my point is that we should not try to even create this illusion or illusionary impression that this is something which only concerns this region. This is an issue of European security. Number two, my point number two. When we are talking about this key element of European security, we feel, we can clearly define it, that there is a security vacuum. And again, I repeat, if there is a security vacuum here, that means there is a security vacuum in the rest of Europe as well. How did it emerge? I mean, I think at the moment we are all able to understand it. One reason why the security vacuum emerged is connected with the wrong policies of some states of the region. In here, I would primarily mean Ukraine, and not only the previous government, but several administrations before the previous one as well. The Ukrainian military was cannibalized for a very, very long period of time. In 2008, after the Russian-Georgian War, the tension grew, and some people started talking about possible hostilities between Russia and Ukraine, but that didn't happen. Even 6 years back, it could not happen, because the price that an attacking side would have to pay would be very big. But Russia learned its lessons. It learned its lessons. It embarked on a very ambitious process of military reform. It has invested a lot of money, and as a result, it got a much better, much more capable military. And Ukraine, on the contrary, it was going down. So when the push came to shove, it didn't have the capacity that it needed to stop it. So the countries of the region contributed to the emergence of the security vacuum. But more importantly, it was, of course, the West, which agreed to the emergence of the security vacuum, because essentially it's the lack of the concentration of the West, it's the lack of attention, it's the lack of understanding, It's actually a retreat of the West from the Black Sea region in the security sense of the word that led to the emergence of this vacuum. Some people in the West just had rosy or blue eyes. They were too postmodern. They didn't want to believe that the military power still matters and that the traditional security calculations still matter. They thought that they lived in this great world where there would be no wars, and that's why they didn't want to pay any attention. Some other people in the West were not rosy-eyed. They were cynical. They simply thought that these problems would not concern them. They thought that, for instance, Germany did not want to be a frontline state. Therefore, it supported the NATO enlargement to include Poland. But it's a lot less receptive to the similar sentiment in Poland when Poland does not want to be a frontline state and wants to enlarge even further. These are, in a way, from some people's point of view, Poland's problems, not Germany's problems, let alone Ukraine. So when what happens in Crimea has an impact on the Baltic state and Poland and raises concerns there, it resonates a lot weaker in Germany and some other old member states. So this vacuum emerged thanks to the wrong policies of the West. And for me as a scholar, the key point was, of course, Bucharest, the Bucharest summit of NATO. I'm not challenging the decisions. It doesn't matter whether I agree or disagree with the decisions. I understand the decisions. But I certainly disagree with the attitude that was demonstrated during the Bucharest summit. I was not there. So I was not in that room. But even the Russian media at that moment reported those famous words of Mr. Putin, "There is no such state as Ukraine. There is a mechanical composition of territories partly donated by us and partly belonging to Central Europe." By that moment, NATO and Ukraine had a charter of distinguished partnership for more than a decade. EU and Ukraine had a special relationship and the PCA for almost 14 years. I did not hear about any head of a Western state leaving the room when these words were pronounced. And if you tell me, if you want to understand when Moscow realized that the limits of possible in its policy are much kind of more relaxed than we at that moment wanted to think, it was then, when nobody left that room, and by staying in that room, agreed with the statement. So my last point, since you finally have the security vacuum like any other vacuum in the nature, it's going to be filled. Russia is filling it. It's being sucked in. It sees the opportunity, as David Kramer said in the morning, that it perceives the Western weakness as the opportunity. And furthermore, I mean, what is good about current Russian leadership? And that's why I'm always taking an issue with statements that you cannot rationally understand Russia. Of course you can. Mr. Putin said in 2004, in his Beslan speech, "The weak get beaten." This was the message number one. In February 2013, the Russian foreign policy concept stipulated clearly that the West is in decline. You start reading it, and immediately after the preamble, you get that premise. The whole Russian foreign policy concept is premised on the decline of the historical West. So 2 and 2 were put together. The West is weak, and the weak get beaten. And here we are, and unfortunately, regardless of whether we say Ukraine was a victim or an object of aggression, the reality is the one that we are dealing with. And it's very unfortunate. So I'm concluding. The region, the Black Sea, does not have always to be a battlefield. But two preconditions would have to be met. One is the serious institutional, including security, reforms in the countries of the region, in Ukraine in particular. And the other one, a very serious homework done in the West. I am hopeful that the former we will see. Unfortunately, still at this moment, I'm less hopeful that the latter will become a reality soon.